It's an ordinary afternoon in a small Brazilian farming town. Maria Aline da Silva is taking her twin sons, Andre and Adrian, to have their picture taken. Across town, Adriana Peck is starting her shift at the town grocer's. And up the road in the hardware store, you'll find her twin brother, Adriano. Out the back, two men are laying tiles, twin brothers, Delmar and Vilmar Labens. At the cafe, Jean is playing pool with his twin brother, Giovan. Everywhere you look, there are twins. Seeing double is normal in Candido Godoy, Brazil. Among the 80 or so families living within a 1.5 square mile area, there are 44 pairs of twins. That's around 10 times the global average. Why is the rate of twinning here so much higher? Why here, in this tiny, remote Brazilian town? It's a question that has perplexed the mostly German community for years. Some blame fallout from nuclear weapons tests. Others say it's down to some kind of divine or alien intervention. No one knows for sure, but one sinister theory has given the town and its younger residents a dubious reputation as the products of one of the most notorious Nazi war criminals to flee the Third Reich.
During the early 60s, something very curious happened at Candido Godoy. An explosion in the birth of twins. There is no reasonable, convincing explanation for what's happening.
Author George Camarasa has written a book about his theory. It's controversial, and some might say far-fetched.
At the same moment when the twins appeared, and in the exact same place, there were sightings of Dr. Josef Mengele.
According to his sensational story, the infamous Nazi war criminal, Dr. Josef Mengele, somehow succeeded in creating a town full of twins, a feat that would defy modern medicine. In 1943, the SS officer and doctor was responsible for determining the fate of those sent to Auschwitz. 400,000 people were sent to the gas chambers under his command. Dubbed the Angel of Death, he was obsessed with twins. Gerald Posner is an internationally recognized authority on Josef Mengele. In the early 1980s, he spent 4 years preparing a legal case against those who helped him escape. He collected some 25,000 pages of documents, hundreds of hours of eyewitness testimonies, and rare artifacts of Mengele's life on the run. Much of what is known about Mengele today comes from his investigation.
I think what is key in understanding Mengele and his work at Auschwitz is that he was a functionary. He worked within the Nazi system. He did it within the creation of the Third Reich and what they authorized.
The Nazi Empire was the perverse manifestation of a racist fantasy. Adolf Hitler was not just out to conquer the known world. His goal was to sterilize the populations he subjugated and to fill the void with a biologically engineered Aryan master race. Nazis wanted to increase the fertility of Aryan women, to create a self-perpetuating population of blonde-haired, blue-eyed super-people. For Mengele, the key to making this dream come true seemed to be hidden in twins. If he could make every good fertile Aryan woman have at least 2 children at every birth, he might have been a hero, a father of Nazi medicine. But he had to solve a mystery that confounds science to this day. Although scientists understand how twins develop in the womb, exactly why they develop, what causes twins, remains a medical mystery. Mengele was determined to find that trigger, and his position at Auschwitz gave him the perfect opportunity. The death camp provided a perfect laboratory for horrific Nazi experiments. Doctors could operate without morals or emotion. Sadistic experiments were conducted on people they regarded as subhuman. Mengele conducted a series of vicious experiments on pregnant women to unlock the secrets of twins. According to researcher Gerald Posner, they ranged from attempts to artificially induce twin conception, with often fatal blood transfusions, to outright slaughter, to conduct experiments on the dead mother's placentas. He's also said to have forced twins to mate with each other, to see if they would produce further generations of twins. Prisoners became an unlimited supply of subjects. Fresh shipments arrived day and night. For Mengele, unlocking the riddles of reproduction was simply a matter of time. The thought that Germany might lose the war apparently did not cross the doctor's mind. The Reich would prevail for 1,000 years, perhaps populated by his artificially induced Aryan twins. By 1945, it was clear that the 1,000-year Reich was all but finished. 10 days before advancing Allied forces liberated Auschwitz, Mengele fled. According to eyewitnesses, he packed up the notes and documents he'd made after a year and a half at the death camp. Other accounts say he also took slides and blood samples with him in a black case. Shedding his SS uniform, Joseph Mengele disappeared into the chaos of post-war Germany. He dodged the Allies and made it through to the Italian port of Genoa with a false passport. In 1949, he boarded a freighter bound for South America. Mengele, with his precious black bag, entered the New World.
Mengele arrives in the port of Buenos Aires and finds that, for the first time in a long time, he can be free and can feel safe.
Mengele found himself in a bustling modern metropolis, full of European expats. Buenos Aires, the Paris of South America, is where a tantalizing mystery would begin. The notorious Angel of Death became an anonymous face in the crowd. For those hoping to bring him to justice for crimes against humanity, the trail went cold. Writer George Camarasa believes he has sensational evidence that the notorious Nazi doctor Josef Mengele could be responsible for an explosion of twins in a remote farming town.
I had been studying Mengele's life in exile. When I read news stories about Cándido Godoy, about the twins, and I was able to connect the dots between Mengele's obsession with twins and the explosion of twin births in Cándido Godoy.
While developing his story, the novelist searched for any kind of evidence that Mengele had the motive, method, and opportunity to successfully perform experiments on the people of Cándido Godoy. His research led him to Jacinto Zabolowski, a lawyer and local doctor who lives a few kilometers outside the town.
Many people from Germany lived here, people with connections with Nazism who didn't identify themselves. We have several interesting photos here. Here's a public school photograph from Cándido Godoy. The students are with the Brazilian flag and a Nazi swastika.
The town's German heritage is intriguing. Could it be that Mengele felt at home there? The lawyer also claims to have statements from eyewitnesses to support the story that Mengele operated in the town. The writer George Camarasa claims he was able to interview some of these witnesses before they passed away.
I was able to interview some witnesses who still remember Mengele. They spoke with me of a German doctor's visits. Some people remember him with one name, others with a different name. They recognize his picture as soon as they see it. That's him, they say, when they see a photo of Mengele.
The details are suitably chilling.
There was a doctor who wandered through the region, giving the ladies potions. There was also a person who used to buy blood. There was another who used to ride in a closed van. This laboratory had experiments, had syringes. This all happened during the 1960s, but unfortunately the people who are eyewitnesses have already died.
He said that he had prescribed some pills. Mengele also had drawn blood from them. These reports, that was quite shocking, because it was like watching Mengele working directly on women who later on gave birth to twins.
Mengele, the Angel of Death, treating mothers who gave birth to twins. It was potentially the best-selling angle the writer was looking for. But in Cándido Godoy, twins were less enthusiastic about the suggestion that they were the product of an escaped war criminal's bizarre experiments.
It is disrespectful to suggest that we twins are the fruit of a supposed genetic manipulation by a Nazi executioner.
Town historian Paolo Soltier is himself a twin. He was born in 1964, around the same time Mengele was supposedly treating the town's mothers.
This phenomenon will continue to be a source of great apprehension for us until we discover the true reason behind it.
For years, scientists were unable to produce a credible explanation, until a university team launched a new investigation. Their work could solve the mystery and clear the Nazi-related stigma looming over the town. Did an escaped Nazi war criminal come to an isolated Brazilian town in the 1960s to resume experiments aimed at building an Aryan master race? That's the disturbing question that's been plaguing residents of the small Brazilian farming town of Candido Godoy. A team of scientists hope to find a rational explanation to an apparent explosion of twins.
Just imagine. This community believes it was treated as an object of experiment by Mengele. Imagine now, after 30, 40 years, scientists appear again, all dressed up in white lab coats, treating them as research subjects. That's an image we want to avoid.
Biologists would examine blood samples from the town's mothers, looking for unique proteins. Geologists aim to survey and test possible environmental triggers, while statisticians track down every case of twins for an accurate census of the phenomenon. They hope to find out why so many twins were born in Candido Godoy, and in the process solve a great mystery as to why twins develop in the womb. For the pioneering researchers, the investigation could shed new light on human reproduction and determine once and for all whether a Nazi war criminal really was involved in producing a population of twins. The investigation included a survey of Myro Grimm's cow and pig farm. There are some 15 pairs of twins in the family. He is himself the father of a pair of 17-year-old twin boys, Durley and Julcie, the brothers Grimm. The Grimm family has its own explanation for what is behind the twin boom, and it doesn't include the infamous Angel of Death, SS Dr. Josef Mengele.
The story about Josef Mengele, for me, I mean for our family, we have discussed this many times. But we think that it could be the water from these two springs, but we don't know for sure.
The spring that the farmer believes may be responsible bubbles out of a hill behind his house. It was once the town's primary source of drinking water. Researchers took a sample for testing to see whether minerals or some kind of chemical compound unique to the area could be responsible for the abnormally high incidence of twinning. Organic compounds can degrade quickly, so the sample had to be rushed to a laboratory. According to this farmer, it's not just the townspeople producing high numbers of twins, but plants and animals as well. Stories include crops producing twin ears of corn, while twin cows and even a calf with two heads apparently roam the fields. Rodrigo Carpenendo is the town veterinarian. He knows every farm, every farmer, and every cow for miles around. Some more intimately than others. He agreed to help the university team chase down the tails of the twin cows. Although he hadn't seen any two-headed calves, there were plenty of twin cows. If there really was something in the water that triggered the twins, it made sense that humans weren't the only ones being affected. Multiple cases of animal twins occurred on this one farm alone. One cow gave birth to 4 successive pairs of twins. Out in the yard, oxen also produced multiple twins. One pair identical, the other having different markings, and even more bizarrely, a different number of teats. But the farmyard evidence was circumstantial. Was the local water responsible? Samples taken from the ground spring were tested and found to be normal. No unusual chemicals or compounds were detected. Science appeared to have no explanation for the phenomenon. The inconclusive result merely heightened the mystery for those who believed the sadistic Nazi doctor, Josef Mengele, could be responsible.
At the very least, this is curious and alarming. There is no reasonable scientific explanation about what's happening in Cándido Godoy. Scientists from all over the world have tried, and they haven't been able to come up with an explanation.
The author was convinced he'd found further evidence that could explain the strange occurrences of twinning in the animals of Cándido Godoy. Anecdotes that suggested that Dr. Mengele had also posed as a vet.
There were farmers who spoke of being at meetings with Mengele, in which he tried to persuade them that he was able to improve their cattle. He prescribed some kind of product, a medication. Mengele promised the farmers that he could make their cattle produce twins.
What could be injected into a cow to potentially induce twins?
About the only thing that was available in the 1950s they could have increased the twinning rate among cattle would have been growth hormone.
Dr. Gary Steinman is a leading researcher on twinning. Even today, definitive proof of the exact mechanism that triggers twins remains unknown. But Dr. Steinman has made observations that may be revealing a piece of the puzzle. He has shown that cattle injected with growth hormone have a significantly higher rate of twinning than hormone-free cattle. Growth hormone stimulates the production of a protein called IGF, and high IGF levels correlate with twinning in both cattle and humans. Such a link begs the question: did Mengele discover the growth hormone twinning connection some 50 years before? Like much of what is said about the so-called angel of death, the evidence is based on rumor, speculation, and stories from people who are no longer alive to verify the claims. The story of Josef Mengele's post-war life is full of strange tales. One says he ended up living deep in the jungle with indigenous people. Another that he was employed as a researcher for the CIA. The Cándido Godoy twin story may turn out to be just another myth. But there are a few known facts. In the 1950s, Josef Mengele was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, some 800 kilometers away from the Brazilian town. Exactly what Mengele did here from 1949 to 1959 was unknown. Until 1984, when lawyer Gerald Posner traveled to Argentina to gather evidence.
There had been rumors for years that Argentina had a large Mengele file. Simon Wiesenthal, the Nazi hunter from Vienna, had asked for it. The British government had asked for it, had been rejected. The Israelis had asked for it, and been rejected.
After weeks of requests and red tape, the investigators' perseverance finally paid off. Late at night, he got a surprise invitation to the police archives.
I was taken to the downtown police station when a federal police colonel across the desk, very unhappy to be there, told me that I could have access to a file. Inside a room that I was taken to was a treasure trove of information filling in 10 years of Joseph Mengele's life.
The treasure trove of Joseph Mengele archive include his application to enter the country, immigration documents, bank and mortgage statements, business dealings, telephone and address listings, all under his own name. It seemed that the Argentinian authorities knew exactly where he was and what he was up to, but made no effort to arrest him.
Mengele had a free window. 1949, when he finds freedom arriving in Buenos Aires, until 1959, Joseph Mengele can do anything he wants. He can even take that black bag that he took from Auschwitz and start experimenting again on people.
But one intriguing file stood out, relating to pharmaceuticals.
In the mid-50s, Mengele starts a firm, Fadro Farm. And according to Argentine law, when you start a company, you have to give a listing of what its purposes are. You have to have filings for it. And the filings and everything show that what it was a pharmaceutical company.
According to the lawyer, Mengele's company imported veterinary medication before expanding into human medicine. These facts seem to support speculation that the Angel of Death may well have relaunched his warped experiments in South America. Could he have brought them to the mothers of the small rural community at Candido Godoy? A shadow was hanging over the Brazilian town of Candido Godoy, the dark figure of the infamous Nazi war criminal Joseph Mengele. Local historian Jacinto Zabalonsky claims to have proof of a direct link between Mengele's pharmaceutical company and the town.
Ô, seu Leonardo, boa tarde, como é que vai, senhor? Tudo bom?
That link is farmer Leonardo Bofler, who says he met a mysterious German man 45 years ago.
I want to show you the book, to see if you remember him.
The one in the military uniform, yes. The person who came here resembled this one, more or less. He was neither fat nor thin. The next day he was gone, but we paid a high price to have him treat our cows. Afterwards, we took the medicines to the pharmacy in town and asked them, "What kind of medication is this?"
If this farmer's 45-year-old recollections are correct, perhaps the Nazi doctor Joseph Mengele did visit the town after all. If so, could the tales of Mengele treating the local women and twin-inducing injections be true as well? Although a motive and a potential method have both seemingly been identified, there is one critical question. Why would he abandon a comfortable life in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and travel more than 800 kilometers to a rural backwater in Brazil? In May 1960, Israeli Mossad agents grabbed one of the most infamous Nazi war criminals off the streets of Buenos Aires. Adolf Eichmann, the man who engineered the Third Reich's extermination of millions.
The Nazi circles in Buenos Aires were in panic. They did not feel safe anymore. Many Nazis disappeared. Mengele took off.
According to George Camaras's story, Mengele fled the Argentinian capital, avoiding major cities. He believes the wanted Nazi disappeared into the countryside, slipping over secluded border crossings, before finally re-emerging in the quiet, rural Brazilian outpost of Candido Godoy.
After Eichmann was captured, Mengele fled to Paraguay, where he had friends. He soon ends up on a farm, a bit further south. From there, it's just over 40 miles to Candido Godoy, where he shows up as a traveling doctor. This region was virtually without borders, where he could move freely, where he was safe and protected.
For the writer hoping to complete a bestseller, the evidence points to a sensation. Mengele enters the town, and the mothers of the town bear twins. But for Mengele's hideous death camp experiments to bear fruit, he would have had to have secretly cracked the twinning code, something which baffles experts to this day. The evidence is circumstantial, yet the story has attracted international attention. But is it true? It's certainly a compelling tale. A Nazi war criminal, obsessed with bizarre racist, pseudo-scientific experimentation on twins, somehow cracks a genetic code, producing an explosion of multiple births, the boys and girls from Brazil. But for one man who has dealt with the harsh realities of the Mengele case, it's a seriously flawed tale. It was legendary Israeli Mossad agent Rafi Etan who captured and abducted Adolf Eichmann. In the 1960s, he also led a team of agents trailing Josef Mengele across South America.
The second kidnapping target after Eichmann is Mengele. It was written in the newspapers.
They almost captured him in 1961.
At this time, he lives in Sao Paulo, in the surrounding of Sao Paulo.
A sudden change in priorities saved the Angel of Death from abduction and Israeli justice. The Mossad was forced to drop the case. But before they abandoned their quarry, Mossad agents pinpointed Mengele in Sao Paulo, almost 1,000 kilometers from the remote town where he was supposedly dispensing his twin-making medicine.
Here we have Sao Paulo, and here we have, how you call the city? Candido Godoy. So you could ask yourself how you go from Sao Paulo to Candido Godoy. Have you traveled in these roads in 1962? I did. I did. I don't believe when I look at the map from Sao Paulo to this area, okay? I don't believe. It's unthinkable.
For a wanted man as notorious as Mengele, travel to Candido Godoy would have been extremely difficult. It would have been a long and dangerous journey of days and even weeks across treacherous roads, all the while exposing himself to possible capture. It can still be an arduous trip to Candido Godoy, but that didn't stop a team of university researchers. Their aim was to gather scientific evidence, to see what was really responsible for the unusually high rate of twinning in the rural town. The hunt for clues brought lead researcher Dr. Shula Ficini to the parish church. A register of baptisms recorded almost every birth and almost every case of twins. It would show exactly when the supposed explosion of the twins took place.
I have just found a pair of twins that were born 3 years ago.
She uncovered a huge and constant number of cases. There was no explosion.
When
you look at the birth records here, you see that twinning has continued at a high rate. A phenomenon like this can often drop off or fluctuate, but the rate of twins here has been unchanged across time.
It's a pattern that eliminated the possibility that Mengele used growth hormone to trigger twin births. A hormone injection would have had only a one-time effect, altering just that one pregnancy, but not future pregnancies or future generations of mothers. Mengele's shadow was starting to fade from the story of Candido Godoy. Artificially triggering twins across multiple generations is scientifically impossible. There had to be another explanation. To find it, scientists had to dig deeper. If the sadistic Nazi war criminal Dr. Josef Mengele wasn't responsible for the huge numbers of twins born in Candido Godoy, what was? In this case, the evidence left behind by those long gone would prove to be key, evidence found in the town cemetery. University scientists Dr. Ursula Mattei and Dr. Shula Ficini were determined to lay to rest the controversy and speculation surrounding the twin mystery. The German pioneers who founded the town at the turn of the 20th century are all buried within a small plot. Although the population has extended to some 80 families, the tombstones indicate the town was founded by just 8 families. For geneticist Dr. Mattei, this information was a crucial piece to the puzzle, providing a simple explanation to the complex science of genetics. The mysterious case of the town twins could be explained by a bag of sweets. Although the sweets inside have different colors, sometimes a random handful produces more of one color than the rest. The same thing can happen with genes and small isolated populations. If just a few families settle in an isolated place, future generations develop from that limited set of genes. While these genes can be rare in the wider world, in an isolated gene pool of a remote town, they can become common. Geneticists call it a founder effect. Candido Godoy was proving to be a perfect place for the researchers to make a landmark scientific discovery, finding the genetic factors that trigger twins. First, they had to build a massive family tree for the twins to show that twinning followed a clear hereditary pattern. They were looking for a possible genetic mutation. To do it, they needed biological samples. Saliva and blood samples were needed from every mother who gave birth to twins. The secret to the twins could be hidden in a single drop. They extracted DNA from the samples, but the human genome is complex, made up of some 30,000 individual genes. the twinning factor could have been hidden inside any one of them. One scientist believes he knows where to look. Twinning expert Dr. Gary Steinman. The mother's blood samples were sent to him for analysis. He believes the answer lies in IGF, the hormone he has correlated to high rates of fraternal twinning. IGF doesn't just come from growth hormone injections. The body can produce it naturally. If IGF levels in the samples were higher than normal, it could indicate that a genetic factor was responsible for hereditary twinning.
If in the samples that we are studying from that population we find an exceptionally high IGF level, the next thing would be to look for a mutation of the IGF gene, that the mutation is the thing that is responsible for the elevated twinning rate.
As the investigation continued, nagging questions remained. Was Mengele aware of the twins in Candido Godoy? Did he, like the modern scientists, attempt to study their blood for answers? The final chapter of the Mengele story is locked behind these doors on a secure military base in Brazil's capital. The archives of the federal police contain the remains of Mengele's life in hiding. Artifacts recovered after his death near Sao Paulo. They include his false identification papers, his pen, a compass, and even his precious briefcase. But there are no samples, just the detritus of a man on the run. Some 30 years after Mengele died, his watch is still ticking. But for researchers, the most valuable relics are the handwritten letters and journals of Josef Mengele himself. Journals of his life in hiding.
If Mengele's sense of narcissism, if his ego, if his passion for his science and genetics was so great that he would take the risk after the war to return to it, he would have also had the same passion, zeal, and courage to have written about it. It would have served no purpose in his ego to have returned to the science without documenting it.
The letters contain no mention of Candido Godoy. No mention of having cracked the code of genetic twinning. No mention of having done any science while on the run in South America. They are simply the ramblings of a depressed and lonely man.
I can say no with absolute certainty. There was no time after the war when Mengele, even if he had the desire, ever returned to any science.
The two families that hid Mengele from 1961 to his death in 1979 declined to appear on camera. They did, however, confirm that Mengele never traveled to Candido Godoy and that he never resumed his experiments. Mengele died ignorant of the answer to the riddle that so haunted him. But that puzzle may soon be solved. Back in her laboratory, Brazilian geneticist Dr. Matt and her team built a huge digital family tree of the twin population in Candido Godoy. It included cases of twins going back to the beginning of the 20th century. The genealogical information indicated that many of these twins do share a common ancestor. As the DNA analysis continues, the team believes a founder effect is the most likely cause. If Dr. Steinman's investigation suggests that twinning is related to the IGF gene, He may be on the doorstep of a fundamental breakthrough in understanding the genetic factors that contribute to hereditary twinning. While the work to find the exact gene responsible continues, the results are clear. The notorious Nazi war criminal, Dr. Josef Mengele, had nothing to do with the twins of Candido Godoy.